Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to This Week in D&D, where I break down the news surrounding Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the tabletop RPG industry. This one will especially be the latter, because it was kind of a slow news week. We're going to dive into tabletop RPGs, at least. In fact, I think hardly any of these news posts are actually about D&D 5e, but you know what? That's not my fault. It's just a slow news week. But the first thing we're going to talk about is relevant to my channel because have I officially announced this yet? By the way, we're gonna do Alien RPG. It's fucking Thursday. I need to put this together. We're still our Friday schedule is kind of all gonna be very chaotic, so I'm still at the last minute figuring out if we're even gonna live stream our session zero. We probably are. It's just gonna be very casual. We're gonna do Alien RPG. We're gonna do Destroyer of Worlds, which if you watched our Alien campaign from 2 years ago that Chris ran, this is that one is kind of modeled after Alien, and then this one is kind of modeled after Aliens, as far as I'm aware. We're actually playing Space Marines instead of a bunch of space truckers. Although I think the lethality will still be there for sure. But I wanted to talk about the second edition because that has just successfully wrapped up its campaign on Kickstarter. The first edition, from what I can understand, was pretty successful. So it's nice to see the second edition has been equally as successful. I had to do the currency exchange because I believe this is Swedish currency, and it translates to over 2 million in US funding, which is pretty damn impressive for any tabletop RPG. I wonder how good this is for Free League, but this is the Evolved edition, which includes a whole new rule set, I expect. Let's see, I actually got a press release about this. This is from a couple days ago, I guess. Yeah, already raising 2 million. This was nearly 2 million. I believe it's over. I think it was like 2.3 million or something by the end of it. You get miniatures. I think you can still back. How does Kickstarter? Kickstarter has late backing, I think, now. But in any case, it's nice to be excited about it. In terms of being delivered as well, which, where does it say on the campaign? Talk about when they actually get delivered on this stuff. September of this year. So timing doesn't quite work out great, obviously for us, because we're jumping into it right now. And I don't know when the next time we'll be able to play Alien RPG will be. But presumably, maybe if we play it a third time, we could use the new rule sets. I'm just kind of reading through the Kickstarter thing. So I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to it, but 11,000 backers is really impressive. I wonder if it comes with more adventures as well. Space is hell. New iconic items, ships, locations from the hugely successful Alien Romulus film. Was that the most recent one? I never actually saw the most recent one. It did look really good. I need to rewatch Aliens with the wife because that's what's going to make us in the mood to play this next edition for sure. Starter set's going to come with a Xenomorph miniature, a bunch of dice. I'm looking forward to the session zero because I really need a refresher on how to play this game, and I'm pretty sure we got at least some of the rules incorrect while we were playing. But we still had a blast. I think that's probably the most important thing, right? Like, it wasn't, the rules weren't like confusing that it was slowing down our game, but it was just like after the fact, we're like, oh, we might have missed a few things here and there. There we go. This is a good little ride. It expands upon the original beloved RPG experience, provides an updated and revised version that will feel both modern and fresh. The evolved core rules include new artwork and new content and various new tools for players and game mothers alike. I don't know if you saw that Chris updated his profile picture on our Discord channel because he's no longer Gottwald. He is now the game mother. Page layouts, new artwork, life path character generation, revised and expanded core rules for talent, stress and panic, and stealth. Reworked combat rules for armor, ammo, grenades, stuns, and spaceships. Wow, we have combat for spaceships? Feels like it's pretty far out from Alien, but alright. New stuff from Alien Romulus. Various new rules and tools in high demand from players, including zero gravity, miniatures play support, and expanded campaign play. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of miniatures available. You know, that was something I ran into from a digital aspect when I, for those of you watching our channel for a while, I did Shadowrun 5th edition, I think I want to say, right before we started doing D&D. And that was a problem I immediately ran into, was there wasn't a lot of like assets or, you know, adventure, just content in general. And as soon as I moved to D&D, I was like, oh crap, this is the big leagues and everything's available. And that's, I've kind of been sticking with it ever since, because there's just so much out there for it. So it's a problem whenever people suggest all these other fun RPGs that look cool, but then you, I don't know, you dive into it and you're like, but there's just not that much available. But I guess some of the bigger ones, like Call of Cthulhu's got a lot of stuff there. And I'm also talking specifically not even about physical miniatures, but like digital maps and adventures available and those kind of things. The Evolved Edition is the perfect installment for newcomers. Rework starter sets, everything could need. Expanded Evolved Edition of the fan favorite Hope's Last Day scenario set on Hadley's Hope just prior to the events of Aliens. That's interesting. So was that Expanded Evolved Edition? So that must be a scenario that was in the original RPG then. Rapture Protocols, a new cinematic adventure boxed set. Captures the heart and soul of the franchise's early outings. Set features a crew of a small starfighter on a resupply run to the remote industrial colony, which, unbeknownst to them, is crawling with danger as far as the eye can see. Cool. So not something to dive into yet, but we'll be looking forward to that. And now that I'm getting familiar with Alien, I could even look at maybe reviewing this when it comes out on Roll20. All new Evolved Coming will be available to play across a wide range of popular virtual tabletop platforms, including Alchemy, Foundry, Roll20, and Demiplane. Cool. I wonder if they have the trailer for the new one I can watch. All right, let's see if I can get this. Sorry. Headphones. Make sure I got the... So this is the trailer for the Alien RPG. Oh, this is a 30-second thing. The perfect organism. Is evolving. There's no narration. Alright, that's not the best trailer. I don't really explain anything other than a montage of images, but there we go. That's very cool. So I don't know if anybody has backed this or has any opinions about it. Please let me know. I know some of you have played Alien RPG. I can't be the only one here. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. I used to play the Alien vs. Predator games back in the day online with friends. It was a lot of fun. And LAN parties, actually. In fact, I keep talking about this. I once had a LAN party. So the first Alien vs. Predator movie came out when I was in college. And I had a LAN party. I'm pretty sure... I don't remember if Raymond was there, but I think Chris and Reese were both there. And we all watched all the Alien movies and all the Predator movies while playing Alien vs. Predator on our giant CRT monitors, and then went and saw Alien vs. Predator. That's how big of a dork I am for this franchise. And I thought it was a fine movie at that age too. You're like 20 years old. All those movies are super cool. At least we thought so. So thumbs up for Alien RPG. All right, moving on. We've got a sale from Kobold Press. This is the Terrific sale. A lot of publishers are having sales right now to try and either entice people to buy things that they normally would be very stringent about because of all the worrisome economy stuff coming out, or trying to move product now, before a lot of these things start rippling out and affecting costs. I think this is only for print books, pawns, and map folios, and it's through May 1st. It's a 25% sale on Cobalt Press. Cobalt Press, I've been singing their praises for years. They're one of my favorite, I guess, third-party 5e developers, and they've got their own book series, which I have not covered yet. I keep meaning to, honestly, called Tales of the Valiant, which is, if you recall, whenever they had the big OGL drama disaster walkback thing from Wizards, Cobalt Press came out and said, well, we're going to make our own open source Creative Commons licensed system that uses 5e, and it's called Black Flag. And then they built on Black Flag, they built Tales of the Valiant, which is, as far as I know, like how Pathfinder is to 3.5, I think Tales of the Valiant is to 5e, if that makes sense. It's basically the same thing, but maybe with like obviously some balance things and some changes here and there. So I'm curious if anybody's played through Tales of the Valiant, let me know. Or let me know if you're interested in having me maybe cover it. I could do like a review on the Roll20 or something. And they have started coming out with adventures, which there was at least one adventure that I did download a preview of. So there's some adventure content on here. But Tales of the Valiant is basically Cobalt Press's 5e product. So which I guess that means it's divorced from the 2024 rules as well, because I believe this came out before 2040. The bummer is, of course, Wizards later, like almost instantly came back and said, oh, never mind, we're going to put it in Creative Commons and all that. But by then, I think this company had already spun up their ideas and really excited and taken the momentum for doing their own RPG Creative Commons rule set based on 5th edition. So credit to them where they went with it and stuck to their guns. I just don't know how popular or successful it's been. Clearly, it's a different market than it was back when, Pathfinder was created. And also, Pathfinder was so successful because D&D was going from 3.5 to 4th edition. And 4th edition, although in retrospect, a lot of people do love, at the time I was not involved in D&D at the time, so I'm just going off of what I've read, was not very well received and was extremely divisive and mixed. And thus people were like, oh, but we want to keep playing 3.5, and thus kind of Pathfinder was born out of that. So with Paizo. So the history is a little different now because Wizards is not moving to a new edition. They know that 5th edition is extremely popular, and the 2024 is, they're not even calling it 5.5. They're just like, this is kind of just a rebalanced, like updated 5th edition. So I don't know how successful Tales of the Valiant will be, but I'm certainly 100% rooting for this company, and I probably need to look at reviewing at least the digital version. But you can see there's a lot of stuff out there for Tales of the Valiant, which is the big thing that they're going to be promoting right now. So the sale is at 25% off, specifically their print books, which is about, from what I can tell, the same cost as normal hardcover books, about 40 or 50 bucks for the big giant monster books and Game Master Guide and Player Handbook. And then they've also got a bunch of just books that are compatible with 5e before that came out. And I do own some physical, not everything I have is digital. I do have a shelf of physical books. I mean, every game I've run, I always get the physical book for, the patron game I ran, Empire of the Ghouls, I've got that physical book for. I've also got like at least 1 or 2 of the layer books that they did, which are very nice products. They always have really great maps and everything. So there's some good stuff on here. Just flipping through some of the stuff. Yeah, the pawns, which are mini. You know what? I may be in the minority for this. I'm not actually a big fan of miniatures. I know some of you are just clutching your pearls about that because you love it. I don't care that much, and I think that these standees, well, they call them pawns here, but they're basically like little standees, are perfectly fine. Like I like the Gloomhaven method which is your character is a stand. But then the problem is if your character is a miniature, then they just always have that look. And I feel like, well, I don't know, I like games where you can kind of upgrade your, like the Warcraft style, World of Warcraft or whatever else you like, MMO, where you're constantly like getting new gear and your character's looking different as you progress. Where if you have a miniature, your character is that fucking look and character, right? So with Gloomhaven, you had your miniature as your character, but then all the enemies were just standees and pawns, which I think works perfectly fine. But I know I'm in the minority for that. And a lot of people really like their miniatures, which fair enough. Which in fact, the opposite then would be the case, where it's like your character should be the evolving standee, and then your enemy should be the miniatures because they all look the same. But whatever. Ironically, Gloomhaven is now producing miniatures that you can get for their set, but they're totally in the middle of the tariff trade war, and that poor company has just been. They put out some really good information. I already covered that in a previous this week in D&D stream, but they're in the midst of a huge just economic meltdown for their company and have provided all kinds of details and information about how it's actively harming them, and they've got like just products sitting in China that they can't bring over, which is a big bummer. So, but please check out Cobalt Press. They have really great stuff here if you're interested in buying physical stuff, especially these map dungeon mats. I would be very, if I was running more physical campaigns, that would for sure be something I would want to pick up. And I think they've always done incredible. In fact, I'm going to look at one of these. They always do incredible map art. Like all of their products. Oh, they don't give me a preview. That's a bummer. That includes a lot of dungeon options though. I've been very impressed with their map quality art in every single one of their products. I've never been disappointed. Unlike in my D&D reviews, which you can watch countless of official products, where it's always just a fucking roll of the dice to see like how good, you know, the map art's gonna be, if it's gonna be just graph paper stuff or whatever, or use a combination of both. Cobalt Press has always created just amazing, full color, detailed map art that has been just incredible, and I've never been disappointed in it. So that's always a huge plus for me. As much as I don't care about miniatures, I do care about map art, and I think that adds a lot to the experience for me. But again, I'm somebody who really comes from a virtual tabletop where the miniatures aren't really a thing, that little tokens just fine, but the map art itself is really good. So that's where I'm coming from. We convert a new mini when we get a good upgrade. We keep the cycle going. So do you use like 3D printing and stuff for doing that? What is that? Hero Forge, I guess, is an option. The plastic crack must follow. Yeah. You know, and to say that I don't care about minis, like, I don't know if I grew up playing, but I really liked the game Heroscape. Shout out if you know what that is. In fact, it actually just recently came back. I believe Hasbro just recreated it, and it's available now with miniature. But that was a miniature war game, but it was like it wasn't like a Mech Warrior or Warhammer or something. It didn't require like this huge thick, you know, rule book of like a tabletop RPG or anything. It was almost more like a board game, but still had like a buildable map of hex tiles with miniature figures, and you had little like cards for every figure, and then the whole thing was just everybody had like a movement value. It's almost playing like a JRPG, like tactical combat, like a Fire Emblem or something at that point. Like every unit had a movement, and then had a range, and then like line of sight still mattered. There was height advantage, and then of course everybody had their own abilities, and you built your army because of like each unit or group of units, if they were like a little army, had like a point value that you could use. I really enjoyed that, and I still have all my old figures that haven't brought out in a long time. They're deep in a closet, but that was a really fun game and had pure miniatures. So that was probably my one experience with miniature stuff. But now miniatures have just gotten so prohibitively expensive. I mean, back then you could buy like just a pack of miniatures for like $5 or $10 or something, I feel like, and they were like good, high quality. But now with like slightly better labor laws and everything, and manufacturing the way it is, it's a lot more expensive. So I think that's why Heroscape eventually went away. In fact, it went away around the time that I believe the company was purchased by Wizards of the Coast, and they started putting out D&D versions of Heroscape, and they did that for like maybe a couple months or something, and then it finally, this would have been like the 2000s, I think, and then eventually it went away, but then it just came back like in the last year or two. Anyway, that's going off on a huge side note. Another thing I want to talk about was Heroes of Might and Magic is a tabletop RPG coming from, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Modifius, maybe? Modifius? I don't know where the emphasis is. There's a quick start rules available, which I have been reading through, by the way, available on Drive-Thru RPG. The quick start free PDF is available for Heroes of Might and Magic role-playing system, which uses the 2d20 system, which basically means you add your attribute and your skill, and you get that number, and then for every skill check, you roll 2d20, and then your goal is to get less than your total number, if that makes sense. So the higher your combination of skill and attribute is, the more wiggle room you have of getting the success, I guess. It takes place specifically during Heroes of Might and Magic 3, which is pretty smart because that is the best game. In fact, as a quick side note, Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is one of my all-time favorite games. It's a fucking goat of a tactical strategy game, and I love that it's so beloved. Like, back in the day, I didn't know it was going to be so widely beloved. I just loved this game. I feel the same way about like Final Fantasy VI and like Chrono Trigger and like all these like games that I beloved from my childhood. And then later, once I like connected to the internet and learned about like, oh, other people like really like this game. Oh, it's because they're one of the best games ever. Cool. This was not so much childhood. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 would have been high school for me, but I absolutely fucking love this game. I started with Heroes 2, which is also probably my top 20, 25 maybe. Heroes 3 is just a better game in every way. I absolutely adore it. In fact, I still regularly play it. Occasionally I bring it out and play the what's the Heroes HD version. There's Horns of the Abyss. There's all this. There's a huge fan following for Heroes of Might and Magic. 4 was okay. I played in the day. 5 was actually really good after it got bought by Ubisoft. And I did play a lot of 5, and then I really never played 6 or 7, and those were pretty mixed as far as I can tell. I am looking forward to Olden Era, which is apparently coming out from a indie studio who got I guess, worked with Ubisoft to create a new, very Heroes-looking game. And of course, there's been other games out there that do that kind of just tactical warfare thing. The King's Bounty series has been really good. I can go on and on about it. But what I didn't know is that it's going to turn into apparently a tabletop RPG, which on the one hand, I'm excited about because I absolutely love and have huge nostalgia for and still continue to have great respect for this game. On the other hand, I'm not sure how well it's not a 4X. How do I describe this in layman's terms? I mean, it's a turn-based tactical strategy game like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a tabletop RPG because you are a commander who commands multiple heroes, and each of those heroes has armies, and then you explore a map, you gather resources, you fight like battlefield warfare battles, and then eventually overcome other commanders. None of that really is to me translates directly to a tabletop RPG. And I've been reading through and the way they try to do it is they give you multiple phases. They're like, all right, here's your in town phase, here's your commander phase, and here's your hero phase. And it's a bunch of like skill checks and stuff, which I don't know. I'll need to look more at the quick start rules and see. I've only made it about halfway through. I've not made it quite to the scenario yet, the Krulon Frontier. But it's very much quick start rules where it's like, if you remember like the starter set rules that came with like Lost Mine of Fandel or something is really what you're going to get here. But it's a free download, which is nice. So everybody can check it out. The funny thing is, Heroes of Might and Magic was a spin-off of an actual RPG series called Might and Magic, which began in the 80s. And obviously all RPGs are basically inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, so can't ignore that part of it. But it didn't at all use a D&D. I mean, there were some classes, I guess they said like Ranger and stuff, but they used their own system for everything. And it was a first-person dungeon crawlers. The ones that had the actual like world map was just like a corner of the screen, and the rest of it was all like character sheets and shit. And it went for several games throughout the 90s. And then the Heroes of Might and Magic series spun off of that as like, hey, let's make like a tactical strategy game version set in these worlds. And they actually did a cool thing where like the Heroes games took place in between the later Might and Magic games. So I think like Might and Magic 6 takes place between like Heroes 2 and 3 or something like that. I'm trying to remember what the exact thing is. And I only dabbled in the Might and Magic games. I really need to go back and play them some more. But I did play Might and Magic 4 was one of my very first computer games I ever played. And I have a map framed in my office because it's such a cool fucking map. And I have a lot of nostalgia for that game. But it's weird that they wouldn't choose that to turn into an RPG, because those games were literally just first person, like going around a world, fighting monsters, and like doing quests and dungeon crawling and all the like fucking RPG stuff. So that's my only confusion, is like, why would you choose to do Heroes of Might and Magic and not just Might and Magic? It is ironic that Heroes of Might and Magic became the more popular, long-lasting series compared to the actual Might. They did make another Might and Magic game at some point, didn't they? Ubisoft did. Might and Magic was a different company until the 2000s, and then the brand was purchased by Ubisoft, and that's when they made other Might and Magic games. But they only made I think they made one actual first-person Might and Magic game, and from what I could tell, it was like okay. By the way, play like games like Legend of Grimrock, I think, does a really good job of kind of emulating that experience if it was purely a like puzzly dungeon crawler. Both Legend of Grimrock games are fantastic. So I'm interested in checking this out. If I've pumped up the series enough for you, definitely play the video games. I think they still hold up very well. Heroes 3 is available on Good Old Games, I believe. They did make an HD remaster at one point, Ubisoft did, of Heroes 3, but it didn't include any of the expansions, and it was pretty bare bones, and people were pretty turned off because the original has like all these great mods and things available on it, so it was not a super great experience. But this PDF is available on DriveThruRPG for free, which presumably means the actual full rules are coming later, I think. I can't find any more information about this, other than it's like I mentioned, it's the 2D20 system, which there's been some other games like that. It's not plugged into Roll20 yet, but I think Roll20 does have maybe a generic 2D20 kind of character sheet thing on there. I'd have to look at that. 10 was the last game. Okay. So but 10, wasn't that the one that they made like Ubisoft made like years later? Like the series went from 1 to 9 throughout the 80s and 90s, maybe into the early 2000s. I'm trying to think when 9 was. I remember the poor games whenever like 6 came out. I think 6 used a new engine. Everybody's like, oh, this is so cool. And then 7 used the same engine. We're like, all right, well, this is nice. And then 8 came out and people were like, all right, you need a new fucking engine. This is getting old. And then 9 came out and nobody cared. Like it really like petered out by the end because they just kind of refused to like ever update or get with the times. You could almost say the same of Bethesda, I think, in some ways, but Bethesda at least has the mod support to back them up. But I feel like Bethesda always needed to upgrade their shit too. But the Hero series never had that problem. They evolved. That's the key. So that's the Heroes Might and Magic tabletop RPG. I'm excited in checking more of that out, just because I absolutely love that series to death. What else? Oh yeah, I wanted to mention the Universal Studios Hollywood is getting Dungeons and Dragons experience called Secrets of Waterdeep. This is from Travel Pulse website. Universal Studios Hollywood debuts a first look at the legendary beholder Xanathar. Is it Xanathar or the Xanathar? And his beloved pet goldfish Silgar, as they will appear in the all-new Dungeons & Dragons Secrets of Waterdeep in-world experience at Universal Fan Fest Nights, kicking off Friday, April 25th, this Friday. Tickets are on sale now. Universal Studios Hollywood collaborated with Jim Henson's Creature Shop to create this spectacular, larger-than-life, fully articulated Xanathar. I wish there was a video of this then. So it's like an animatronic, or just, I guess articulated doesn't necessarily mean it's moving. Or does it mean it's moving? What does articulated mean? Does it just have the joints? A picture like an action figure. Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Yeah, for over 40 years. I read a biography on Jim Henson, by the way. Just absolutely fascinating, cool life that dude had that was tragically cut short. Although he still lived to his 50s, I guess. But you know what? The older I get, the younger that gets. So I would say 50s is definitely tragic. Secrets of the Waterdeep in-world experience is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. The epic experience will welcome guests and fans to partake in a one-of-a-kind adventure and explore the fantastic world of D&D. Guests will join the Harpers, a heroic spy network, to foil a plot by the legendary Beholders Anathar and save the city of Waterdeep. I don't know exactly what that means. Is it like one of those what's the thing where you can go at like conventions and play the kind of live action role playing a little bit, escape roomy thing? There's a word for that. I actually did it one time at one of the PAX conventions. Or I did like a preview maybe. I don't know if I did the full thing. I forget what that's called. But it's like you play like a character, and honestly it feels kind of like an escape room like puzzle challenge thing mixed with like live action role playing, I guess. I don't know if that's what this is. FanFest nights will feature all new uniquely curated experience inspired by sci-fi, fantasy, gaming, and anime, along with an enticing menu of themed foods. Chance to participate in cosplay, special meet and greet opportunities with wicked characters, additional theme park favorites, Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and Super Nintendo World. Man, Super Nintendo World would be fun as hell. That would be the perfect confluence of like nostalgic adults and interested kids. Which I guess the same could be said of Harry Potter, but fucking J.K. Rowling. God. I swear, being like rich and popular is like a fucking disease on the human brain. I do not understand how she's transformed into such a terrible person. That's got to be so frustrating for like super big Harry Potter fans. Ugh. Special editions and introduce character interactive elements during the event. Okay, I need to ask Chris about this. Chris works for Universal Studios, and he lives in or near Hollywood. So I wonder if he knows anything about this. I don't know if maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. It's just a little section in here, but it seems to be cool if you're in the neighborhood to be able to experience some Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's nice that they can acknowledge that. I'm always appreciated when the things I like hit more mainstream. I'm trying to be the opposite of a gatekeeper. I want as many people as possible to enjoy the things I enjoy. So that way it becomes like cooler and I don't know, more popular, and that thing gets more things to be able to become better. And it's like when the MCU became big, I was like, yes, amazing. Like, this is so cool that Marvel's like a popular mainstream thing now. It's amazing. So D&D, we've all been experiencing that over the last decade, really, where suddenly it's gotten to be more mainstream and popular and less like weird to enjoy this experience. And you don't have to like explain it as much to people. I mean, we're like the opposite from the satanic panic of the 80s. Like, we've come full circle now in a lot of ways. So that's why I'm always excited to see things like this. So that is the, what's it called? Dungeons and Dragons. What is it called? Secrets of Waterdeep in Universal Studios FanFest Nights, which runs apparently throughout the next couple weeks. All right, for our final topic, this is honestly going to be a shorter stream because there's just not that much stuff to friggin' talk about this week. Has JKR become bad for some reason? Her whole personality is being like transphobic, and I don't understand why. Just weirdly hateful. I don't know. It's bizarre. I'm not gonna get into it here, but like, good lord, to where like everybody has to like tiptoe around whenever you talk about Harry Potter stuff. She just like tainted her own legacy by like imagine being just full of money and popularity. It's the fucking Elon Musk thing. Like, and I'm sure there's a lot of like just people that experience this where it's like, why can't you just be happy and content at your huge success and popularity? Just ride that wave and live your life. But instead, you just have to be so fucking weird and hateful Like, I don't understand. It's so crazy to me. But I'm not super rich and popular, so maybe there's just something that like fucks with your brain, and when you get to that point, I don't know. I can't explain it. I want to talk about Sunderfolk, which is a video game that just came out like today or yesterday, and is inspired by D&D, although I would argue it's actually more inspired by Gloomhaven, although you could also say Gloomhaven is inspired by D&D as well. And it's a digital tactical co-op RPG dungeon crawler thing that people play with their phones. So I'll actually show you if you don't know about this game, I'm going to introduce it to you because I think it's a really cool idea that's kind of like playing a board game or RPG, but using digital screens, which I know a lot of people are like, well, fuck that. That's not why I want to get together and do that. And that's fine. But I think for folks that maybe, pulling out a board game or getting all the character sheets and all the stuff out there is maybe a barrier to playing, you just don't have the time or something, which I would probably include myself in that, because I don't have a lot of time to play actual tabletop RPG. Something like this is a lot of fun. Now, this is more about the actual like dungeon crawling warfare experience than it is about the actual like socializing stuff. But this is the initial trailer they did months ago when they announced it, called for Sunderfolk. The announcement trailer.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm the studio head of Secret Door, one of 2 internal studios at Dreamhaven.
And I'm Erin, the game director.
Chris,
and we are so excited to show you what we've been working on.
I believe was a designer for Warcraft and StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3. Dreamhaven, the publisher of this, was founded by Mike Morhaime, who was the previous CEO and founder of Blizzard Entertainment.
Sunderfolk is a tactical turn-based RPG that you play with your friends, family, and loved ones.
It's focused on cooperative play in person, and it's really at the heart
like
of what we're trying to do as a studio.
And it's got like a hex grid.
Sunderfolk really trying to create something
feels very Gloomhaven-y.
that would inspire people to get together in
whatever
person.
your favorite like hex
we want it
grid
to feel similar to a game night, getting together to play a board game,
characters.
or getting together to play D&D with a group of friends or family or loved ones that you really care about, and to share that experience together side by side.
The board game table is something very special, and we want to create a video game that has those same elements.
I don't think it has any dice. I think it uses cards, which is also Gloomhaven inspired.
We're using the phone in everyone's pocket as the control interface. And your phone being the controller allows you to have your own information, as well as roll out only the information needed at any given time.
You also have the board space, which is what we kind of describe as the main screen. This is the spot that all the shared information will be, and it is really trying to parallel that experience of I've got a hand of cards and a board on the ground in front of us.
Let's harness the fact that everybody's got phones.
In Sunderfolk,
and make them play the game with their phones.
This is very similar to a D&D campaign where you're getting back together, playing the same characters, kind of progressing, seeing that story through. You'll pick all of your classes together. We've nailed down a wide range of archetypes.
Also, it's anthropomorphic.
Those characters are based on
classes,
some of the traditional types of characters you see in a role-playing game. One of my favorite characters is the Berserker.
Okay, but it's a bear Berserker. Why don't we call it the Bear Berserker?
My favorite ability on the Berserker is an ability called Fling, because you can pick up your friends and throw them further into the foray, or take an enemy, for example, and throw them back to your friends to deal with.
I love the graphics. I love the look, which looks very much like a tabletop miniatures
have
game.
Depth to them in some really fun and interesting ways.
And I think the phone controller aspect.
And so you'll kind of pick all of your
I'd really want to try
together,
it myself, but
and then you'll go
like
into a mission.
Clever way of
in the mission, you'll be defeating
having
monsters,
each character basically having their own character sheet
objectives that are kind of set
What I don't know anything about,
you're not always just going in
based
and
on
it's
these
like,
videos, is like how good is like
there's a lot of different opportunities
storytelling
for gameplay elements
or questing
and trying
and
out
all
different
that.
builds. One of my favorite
there's no
missions
DM or
is
anything.
Tower Defense Light. You're defending the gates of the town against an invading
biggest,
force, but the towers are
probably
these
criticism for stuff like
bugs
Gloomhaven and
that
Frosting and
are
all
your
those is that the
NPCs,
story
they're helping
is
alongside
just
you.
not
At the very beginning of the mission, you
that
get to
great.
name the
It doesn't
bugs.
offer a lot of like
and
player
I am
choice.
so
For example,
committed
you're
to
just kind of
keeping
going
those
through the
little
motions.
guys alive.
You're completing quests. and you're having fun tactical combat.
You and your group
if
will
those are the aspects you enjoy, which
in town you can head off and kind of do your own agenda.
Video game RPGs.
It's really purposefully built as a little bit of a reprieve from the focus.
A lot of fun. I'm going to pause it here because it's kind of a long video. But yeah, this just came out on Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. I believe is the Steam page here. Yeah, it is $49.99, but I believe you buy one copy, and I think it uses a QR code for everybody to instantly like log in with their phone or you know, connect with their phone, and then immediately have the game available from their phone screen. So similar to, you know, a D&D experience where the DM would need to purchase, you know, something, presumably one of the books or something, to play, but then everybody can just play in from there. And you can play it solo, from what the devs have been saying. I don't know how good of an experience it would be if the game, I assume, the game must scale. I know Gloomhaven can scale dynamically, like between missions, for because every single level scales for number of players, so it would just scale from there. But you would obviously lose a lot of the fun combos and synergies if you're only playing with one person. But if you've got some folks to play with, I know I would be very... So what makes this fun for me is I could play this with like my wife and my oldest daughter, and we could have an absolute blast playing a D&D combat experience that normally would be a lot of work to try to, you know, put together and experience. So that's what I'm very interested in for Sunderfolk. So I think it's pretty cool. But that's basically all I've got to talk about for this week in D&D. Hardly anything about D&D itself, because it's been kind of a slow week, but hopefully we filled out. Hopefully I've alerted you to some, you know, interesting things going on in the tabletop RPG space in general. And I'll be around for another this week in D&D for next week. But thank you all for joining me, and as always, big thank you to the patrons for helping to support this channel. Shout out to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zenicider, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Corey, Big Knot, John F, John L, Nathan, Andrew, Stephanie, Jason, Louis Spuds, Warden, Harold, Demon LC, Tom, They're Eating the Dogs, Marcus, Snuggy, Hugo, Shay, Chris, and Matthew, and gold patrons: RPG Papercraft, Street Boy, and Yuma, Deadless Lounge, Drome, Nathan, Fazagatorta, Scott, Refus, Joey, Glenn, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support, and I will see you next week.